This one purchase delays retirement by years. You're standing in the driveway of a dealership on a Saturday afternoon, and the sun's hitting the hood of this beautiful SUV just right. It's got that new car smell still clinging to the leather. The dashboard looks like something out of a spaceship, and when you press the start button, it purrs. The salesperson is standing there with this knowing smile, arms crossed, giving you space, but not too much space, you know? And in your head, you're already picturing yourself pulling up to your house, your neighbors doing that subtle double take, your kids in the back with way more legroom than they need. It feels like success. It feels like you've made it. And here's the thing, you can afford the monthly payment. You ran the numbers. It's tight, sure, but you can make it work. Maybe you'll cut back on eating out, maybe skip that vacation you were sort of planning. The salesperson just told you about this incredible financing offer. 0% interest for the first year, and after that, it's barely anything. People are locking these in left and right, they say. You're pre-approved. Your credit score is solid. The pen is literally in your hand. So, you sign. My name is Ryan, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others stay stuck in the same financial patterns for decades. And what I'm about to tell you might completely change how you think about the single largest purchase most people make after their home, and how that one decision, that one signature, can quietly push your retirement back by 5, 7, sometimes even 10 years without you even realizing it's happening. Because here's what nobody tells you in that moment, in that driveway with the sun gleaming off the paint. The car you're about to buy isn't just a car, it's a retirement thief. It's a compounding machine running in reverse. And the wildest part? Most people have no idea how much it's actually costing them, not just in dollars, but in time, in freedom, in the ability to eventually stop working and actually live. We're going to break down the real math behind car ownership, the psychological traps that keep us upgrading when we shouldn't, and what this all means for your future. And I promise you, by the end of this, you're going to look at that vehicle sitting in your driveway very, very differently. The invisible wealth transfer. Let's start with something most people never think about: depreciation. Now, I know you've heard this before. Cars depreciate the moment you drive them off the lot. It's basically a cliche at this point. But here's the problem. We hear it, we nod along, and then we completely ignore it, because depreciation feels abstract, like some accounting concept that doesn't really apply to us. It's not like money leaving your bank account. You can't see it, you can't feel it. But it's happening every single day. The average new car loses about 20% of its value in the first year. Just poof, gone. If you bought a $40,000 SUV, that's $8,000 that just evaporated. You didn't spend it on anything, you didn't get anything for it, it's just less valuable now. And over 5 years, that same car will lose about 60% of its value. So your $40,000 SUV is now worth maybe $16,000. You've lost $24,000 in value, and you still owe money on it if you financed it, which most people do. Here's where it gets interesting though. Let's say instead of buying that new $40,000 car, you bought a 3-year-old version of basically the same car for $24,000. You just saved $16,000 up front, right? But the real magic isn't even in that initial savings. It's in what happens when you invest that difference. If you took that $16,000 and put it in a boring index fund averaging 8% annual returns, which is pretty conservative historically speaking, do you know what that's worth in 30 years? About $160,000. That's not a typo. That single decision, buying used instead of new, could be worth over $160,000 by the time you're ready to retire. But wait, it gets better, or worse depending on how you look at it, because it's not just the purchase price, it's the monthly payments. See, when you finance a new car, you're typically looking at a payment somewhere between $500 and $700 a month these days. For a lot of people, that's like a second rent payment. And you're making that payment for 5, 6, sometimes 7 years. Let's say $600 a month for 6 years. That's $43,200 in payments. Now imagine, and stick with me here because this is where it gets wild, imagine you bought a reliable used car for cash, or you financed something way cheaper and paid it off faster. and you took that $600 you're not spending on a car payment and invested it every single month for 30 years. At 8% annual returns, you'd have about $900,000. $900,000 from one decision, from choosing not to buy that new car sitting in the dealership lot with the sun hitting it just right. This is what I mean when I say cars are retirement thieves. They're not just taking your money now, they're taking the future value of that money. They're taking compound interest that could have been working for you and just deleting it. And most people never, ever do this math. They just see the monthly payment and think, yeah, I can swing that. The upgrade trap. Here's where it gets even more insidious, and honestly, this is the part that keeps me up at night sometimes. People don't just buy one expensive car and call it a day, they upgrade over and over and over again. You buy a car, you drive it for 4 or 5 years, and then you start thinking, this is getting old. It's got some miles on it. Maybe I should get something newer, something more reliable. And the cycle starts all over again. New loan, new payment, new depreciation curve eating away at your wealth. I have a friend, let's call him Jake, who's done this 3 times in the last decade. He bought a new truck in 2014, traded it in for a newer model in 2018, and then upgraded again in 2022. Each time he rolled negative equity from the previous loan into the new loan. You know what that means? It means he owed more on his old truck than it was worth, so the dealer just added that debt onto his new loan. He's been making car payments for 10 straight years and has built exactly 0 equity. He's on this hamster wheel and he doesn't even realize it. And here's the kicker. Jake makes good money. He's not financially irresponsible. He's just trapped in this pattern that feels normal because everyone around him is doing the same thing. The car industry has gotten really, really good at making this feel normal. They've normalized 6-year loans. 7-year loans are becoming common now. Think about that for a second. You're financing a depreciating asset for 7 years. By the time you pay it off, the car is basically worthless, and you're probably already thinking about the next one. It's brilliant from a business perspective, terrible for your retirement. Because every time you restart that cycle, you're not just losing money on the new car, you're losing time. You're losing the compounding years that money could be working for you, and time is the one thing you can't get back. You can make more money, you can't make more time. The lifestyle inflation spiral. Let's talk about something a bit more psychological for a minute because I think this is where a lot of the damage really happens. When you upgrade your car, something subtle shifts in your brain. You start to see yourself differently. You're a person who drives a nice car now. And once you've made that identity shift, it's really hard to go backwards. Suddenly, buying a used car feels like a downgrade. It feels like failure, even though rationally you know it's the smarter financial move. I remember when I was in my late 20s, I had this old Honda Civic. It ran fine, looked terrible, but it ran fine. And I was saving so much money because I had no car payment, insurance was cheap, everything was cheap. But I was also embarrassed to drive it to certain places. I'd park far away at events so people wouldn't see me getting out of it, which is insane, right? But that's what happens. We tie our self-worth to these objects. So I upgraded, and suddenly I had a car payment, higher insurance, more expensive maintenance, and I felt good about it. For maybe 6 months, then it was just normal. The hedonic treadmill kicked in, and the car was just my car. But the payment was still there, every month, for years. This is lifestyle inflation in action, and cars are one of the biggest drivers of it, pun intended. Because a car is visible, it's public, it signals something about you to the world, or at least we think it does. And once you inflate your lifestyle in one area, it's so much easier to justify inflating it in other areas. Bigger house, nicer clothes, fancier vacations. It all compounds. And here's the really tricky part. As your income goes up over your career, you're supposed to be increasing the gap between what you earn and what you spend. That gap is what builds wealth. But for most people, what happens instead is their spending rises in lockstep with their income. They get a raise, they buy a nicer car. They get a promotion, they upgrade to a luxury brand. The gap never widens, sometimes it shrinks. So you're making more money, but you're not actually getting ahead. You're just living a slightly more expensive version of the same life. And retirement? Retirement keeps getting pushed further and further into the future because you're not building that nest egg at the rate you need to. The true cost of transportation. Okay, let's get granular for a second, because I want you to really understand the full picture of what a car costs. It's not just the purchase price or the monthly payment. There's insurance, which for a new expensive car can be $150, $200, sometimes $300 a month. There's gas, there's maintenance, and newer cars are more expensive to maintain because everything is computerized, and you can't just fix it yourself in your driveway anymore. There's registration and taxes. If you live in a city, there's parking. AAA estimates that the average cost of owning and operating a new car is about $10,000 a year, per year. That's in addition to the depreciation we talked about earlier. So if you're driving a new car, you're probably spending somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000 a year on transportation when you add it all up. Now compare that to someone driving a paid-off used car. Their costs might be like, I don't know, $5,000 a year, maybe $6,000. So that's a difference of $6,000 to $9,000 every single year. Over a 30-year career, saving just $7,000 a year on transportation and investing that difference at 8% returns gives you about $850,000. And we're not even talking about living without a car. We're just talking about being strategic about which car you choose and how you pay for it. I know this sounds repetitive, but I keep coming back to these numbers because I think they're genuinely shocking, and they only sink in after you've heard them a few times. We're talking about the difference between retiring at 55 or retiring at 65, between having financial freedom in your early 60s or being stuck working well into your 70s, all from cars. The emotional justifications we tell ourselves. Let's get real for a minute about the stories we tell ourselves to justify these purchases, because I've told them to myself too, and I hear them all the time. I need a reliable car. Okay, yes, you do. But here's the thing, reliability doesn't mean new. A well-maintained 3-year-old Toyota or Honda is just as reliable as a brand new one, and it costs half as much. The idea that you need to buy new to get reliability is mostly marketing. I deserve it. I work hard. Absolutely, you work hard, no question. But do you deserve to push your retirement back 7 years? Do you deserve to stress about money in your 60s? Because that's the trade-off, and nobody talks about it in those terms. It's an investment. No. A car is not an investment. An investment is something that generates returns. A car loses value the second you buy it. It's a tool, it's transportation, but it's absolutely not an investment, unless you're buying like a vintage Ferrari or something, and even then, you better know what you're doing. The interest rate is so low. Low interest on a depreciating asset is still a bad deal. You're borrowing money to buy something that's guaranteed to lose value. That's not a clever financial move, that's just expensive. I'll keep it forever. Statistically, you won't. The average person keeps a car for about 6 years. And even if you do keep it for 12 or 15 years, if you overpaid by $15,000 at the beginning, you still overpaid by $15,000. Keeping it longer doesn't erase that initial loss. I think we tell ourselves these stories because it's uncomfortable to admit that we're making an emotional decision. We want to believe we're being rational, that we've thought it through, that we've done the math, but usually we've already decided we want the car and then backwards engineer the justification. And look, I'm not trying to shame anyone here. I've done it, we've all done it. We're human. We like nice things. We like the feeling of success, of progress, of treating ourselves. That's all totally normal and okay. But it's worth being honest about what it's costing us. What actually makes sense? So what's the alternative? What does smart car buying actually look like? Here's what I recommend, and this is based on both the math and honestly just watching people who build wealth successfully over time. First, buy used. Specifically, buy a car that's 3 to 5 years old. You avoid the steepest part of the depreciation curve, but you're still getting a relatively modern, safe, reliable vehicle. Let someone else take that initial hit. Second, buy a brand known for reliability and low maintenance costs. Honda, Toyota, Mazda. These are not exciting choices, and that's kind of the point. You want boring. Boring is good when it comes to cars. You want something that starts every time, doesn't break down, and doesn't cost a fortune to fix when something eventually does go wrong. Third, pay cash if you possibly can. I know that's not realistic for everyone, but if you can save up and buy a car outright, even if it means driving something really basic for a few years while you save, you avoid all the interest payments and you start from a position of ownership rather than debt. Fourth, if you have to finance, keep the loan term as short as possible and put down at least 20%, 3 years max. Yes, the payment will be higher, but you'll pay so much less in interest over the life of the loan, and you'll be less likely to end up underwater on it. Fifth, keep it for as long as possible. Drive it into the ground. I'm talking 10, 12, 15 years. Once you've paid it off, keep making that payment to yourself. Put it in a savings account or an investment account. That way, when you do eventually need to replace it, you can pay cash for the next one. And here's the thing, when you do this, when you make these unsexy, practical decisions about cars, you free up so much money for the things that actually matter. For retirement contributions, for your kids' education, for building an emergency fund so you're not one car repair away from going into debt, for experiences and travel and spending time with people you love. Because ultimately, your car is just a tool to get you from point A to point B. That's it. It's not your identity. It's not a measure of your success. It's just transportation. The retirement math made simple. Let me make this really concrete with a specific scenario, because I think sometimes all these numbers floating around can feel abstract. Meet Sarah and Jessica. They're the same age. They make the same income, let's say $75,000 a year, and they're both starting their careers at 25. Sarah buys new cars. Every 6 years, she gets a new vehicle. She always has a payment around $600 a month. Over her 40-year career, she spends about $288,000 on car payments alone, not counting insurance, gas, maintenance, all that other stuff. Jessica buys reliable used cars for cash. She saves up for a few years, buys a $15,000 used Honda, and drives it for 10 years. Then she does it again. Over her career, she spends about $60,000 on vehicles. The difference is $228,000. But remember, it's not just about the money spent, it's about the opportunity cost. If Jessica invests the money she's not spending on car payments, about $500 a month on average, over 40 years at an 8% return, she ends up with about $1.7 million. Sarah has a 9-year-old car that's worth maybe $8,000. Same income, same career, different car decisions. One retires a multimillionaire. The other is probably still working because she doesn't have enough saved. This is the part that honestly kind of haunts me, because Sarah isn't being reckless. She's not buying Ferraris. She's just buying normal, new cars that everyone around her is buying. She's doing what feels normal and responsible, and it's destroying her financial future. Breaking free from the cycle. So how do you actually change this pattern if you're already in it? Because for a lot of people watching this, you already have a car payment. You're already in the cycle. What do? First, stop the bleeding. Don't trade in your car for something new or newer unless it's literally falling apart and costing you thousands in repairs. Ride out the loan you have. Get to the finish line. Second, once you've paid it off, keep driving it. I know it's tempting to celebrate paying off your car by getting a new one, but that's exactly the trap. Keep that car for as long as it's safe and reliable. 5 more years, 7 more years, as long as you can. Third, take that payment you were making, or even just half of it, and redirect it to a high-yield savings account or an index fund. Automate it so you don't even think about it. You're already used to that money being gone every month, so just send it somewhere that actually benefits you. Fourth, when you do eventually need to replace your car, pay cash. Use that money you've been saving. Break the financing cycle completely. And look, I know this isn't glamorous advice. I know it's not exciting, but you know what is exciting? Having the option to retire at 58 instead of 68. Having enough money saved that you're not stressed about bills when you're older. Having the freedom to take a year off and travel, or spend time with grandkids, or pursue something you're passionate about. That's what this trade-off is really about. It's not about depriving yourself of a nice car. It's about choosing your future over your present image. The bigger picture. Here's what I think this all comes down to, and why I spend so much time thinking about this stuff. We live in a culture that constantly tells us we need more. Nicer house, nicer car, nicer clothes, nicer everything. And the bar keeps moving. What felt like a luxury 5 years ago is now just normal. What felt like enough is suddenly not enough anymore. And the car thing is maybe the perfect symbol of this because it's so visible, so public, and so normalized. Taking on $40,000 of debt for a depreciating asset is seen as totally reasonable. Not doing it, driving an older, paid-off car, is seen as weird or cheap. But the people who build real wealth, they're the ones willing to look weird. They're the ones who don't care what their neighbors think of their 10-year-old Camry. They're playing a different game with a different scoreboard. Because here's the truth. Nobody actually cares about your car as much as you think they do. People notice it for like 5 seconds, and then they forget about it and go back to thinking about their own lives. That moment of validation you get when someone compliments your new SUV, it fades so fast. But that car payment, that sticks around for 6 years. I think a lot about the concept of enough. When is a car good enough? When is anything good enough? And I think for most of us, the answer is way sooner than we realize. A reliable, safe, comfortable car that gets us where we need to go, that's enough. Everything beyond that is just status signaling, and we're paying for it with years of our lives. The freedom on the other side. Let me paint you a different picture. Imagine you're 60 years old. You've been working for 35 years. You're tired. You've been at the same job for a long time, and you're ready to do something different. Maybe travel. Maybe spend more time with your family. Maybe just wake up without an alarm clock and read books and putter around in your garden. If you've been making smart financial decisions, including smart car decisions, this is possible. You've got $1.2 million in your retirement accounts, maybe $1.5 million. You can retire. You can do whatever you want with your time. But if you've been upgrading cars every few years, financing everything, keeping up with the Joneses, you've got $300,000 if you're lucky. You can't retire. You've got to keep working for another 5 years, 7 years, maybe 10 years. That's the real cost. Not dollars. Time. Every expensive car purchase is buying you a nicer vehicle now for exchange for more years of mandatory work later. And when you frame it that way, when you really sit with that trade-off, it becomes a lot easier to drive past the dealership and head home to your paid-off Honda. Look, I'm not here to tell you to never buy a nice car or to feel guilty about wanting nice things. That's not the point. The point is to make these decisions with your eyes open, to understand what you're really trading, to count the actual cost, not just the monthly payment. Because the thing about retirement isn't just that it's expensive to fund, it's that the window to prepare for it is shockingly short. Most of your retirement savings growth happens in the last 10 to 15 years of your career, because that's when compound interest really goes crazy. But if you're starting from zero in your 50s because you spent your 30s and 40s on car payments, you've missed the window. You can't get those years back. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go outside and look at your car. Really look at it and ask yourself, is this worth 5 extra years of work? Is this worth delaying the life I actually want to live? If the answer is yes, if that car genuinely brings you so much joy and value that it's worth the trade-off, then great. Own that decision. No judgment. But if the answer is no, if you're being honest with yourself and you realize you bought it because you thought you were supposed to, because it's what everyone else was doing, because the salesman made it seem like a good deal, then it's time to make a different choice. The good news is, it's not too late. Whether you're 25 or 45 or even 55, you can change course. You can stop the cycle. You can start making decisions that prioritize your future freedom over your current image. Your future self, the one who gets to retire early, who has options, who isn't stressed about money when you're older, is going to thank you. Trust me on this one.